Hello, this is Amvian of Amvian Spirit Gems and Readings, and this is a video, it's a course to help you to utilize stones and crystals in your metaphysical practices. So here we are. I'm going to be putting together a series of videos to help you learn all about stones, crystals, and rocks. And yes, there is a difference between rocks and crystals and stones and elements and minerals. We're going to learn all of that geology stuff. Then we're going to go into how to utilize stones and crystals for metaphysical practices. So learning things like how to make stone combinations. What are the vibrations of stones? How do they align with the different chakras or energy centers in our bodies? How do we use them for manifestation work? Crystal grids. And then how I use them in divination. I'm going to go over a series of about 8 hours of lecture here. I'm going to have some geology and some science. We're going to have a lot of fun, and I hope that you enjoy this course. So get out your notebooks, get out your pens and pencils. If you have questions, feel free to contact me through my webpage, and here we go. Your journey of using stones and crystals for your metaphysical practices is about to begin. But first, gotta get a little geeky on you. There, that's better. Now I feel a little more sciencey. So we're going to talk a little bit first about geology because, well, we need to understand a little bit about how these stones and crystals come about in the world. So one of the things I'm always going to recommend is a good basic geology text. I really love this book put out by the Smithsonian Institution because it has great photographs and it's just really nice, concise information. And this is really going to help you to identify the different stones you have in your collection. Now, the other thing is we're going to talk about are elements forming minerals and how minerals then go on to form stones and crystals and rocks, and what are the different kinds of rocks and where do they form in the earth. All of this is really great information for you to have to understand how this whole thing works. I'm also going to go over some things like the Mohs hardness scale that'll help you to identify stones at home. So let's get a little sciencey. It'll be fun. This is the Mohs hardness scale. This is a scale that allows amateur geologists like you and I at home a way to help identify the different stones and crystals we may come across. You see, you only need some common household items like a copper penny, a knife, or a nail, and you too can find out just what you have in your collection. That's some really great information. So I should be able to take this nice, bright, shiny copper penny and see if it scratches my fluorite here for identification. Oh wait, one tip. This nice, bright, shiny copper penny has hardly any copper in it at all. What you want to do is you want to get a penny that was manufactured prior to 1982. Those are about 95% copper and will work much better when you're using the Mohs hardness scale at home with your collection. So let's start at the beginning of how things are formed. This is the periodic table of elements. And elements are the simplest basic chemical components of all substances. An element is defined by its composition of unique atoms with specific atomic structure defined by the number of protons and neutrons and electrons that make it up. Elements combine chemically to create molecules. Molecules combine chemically to create compounds, which all come together to create the minerals that are the basis for all the crystals, stones, and rocks we see on planet Earth. Basically, elements combine to create basic molecules that come together to form minerals. Here's a rendition of what a basic molecule could look like. In this diagram, imagine each circle or sphere here in this diagram is an element, and that each line represents a chemical bond. And this square can then combine with other like squares or other like molecules to create the basic minerals. A mineral is defined as a solid chemical compound that occurs naturally. So certain specimens that we collect as part of our collections are composed of pure mineral. And there are over 4,000 plus minerals identified by the National Geologic Society. So here are some of the basic minerals you may have in your collections, like hematite, quartz, kyanite, fluorite, or pyrite. These are considered minerals because they are composed of a single chemical molecule. Minerals then come together through various processes to create rocks. Now, I have been asked, and I've actually been looking it up for several years, what is the difference between a rock and a stone? And apparently, these terms can be used interchangeably. Rock is a geological term, but the term stone is not. So, you can use them interchangeably. So here are some rocks that you might have in your collection, like beautiful blue lapis lazuli, anything in the jasper family, or black obsidian. These are all rocks composed of various minerals. So there are three basic categories of rock: igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary. And these rock types come about through the action of magma at the Earth's core, pressure, heat, erosion, and sedimentation over time. This is called the rock cycle. The rock cycle is Mother Earth's way of creating, eroding, and recycling minerals and stones to create those stones and crystals and rocks that we are going to use for our metaphysical works. So igneous rocks are formed during the process of hot magma coming up from the Earth's core and cooling slowly prior to reaching the surface, or quickly at the surface. This creates the two categories of igneous rock: extrusive and intrusive. So that's interesting. As you can see, there's a lot of energy put into the formation of these rocks and stones from Mother Earth. For igneous rocks, we get the slow cooling varieties, which produce the granites. Granites cool slowly underneath the Earth's crust, and this particular type of granite is called K2-nite or K2 granite. It's got inclusions of azurite, and in this other portion is the slow cooling process of the minerals of quartz, mica, and feldspar. We have the quick cooling variety of igneous rock, and one of the most popular kinds that we use for metaphysical practices are volcanic glass. This is magma that cooled more quickly on the Earth's surface in an environment high in silicates, forming obsidian. The next type of rock is metamorphic rock. Metamorphic rock can be formed from various substances. It can be formed from minerals, igneous rock that has already been formed intrusively, or fossilized organic material. When these are placed under intense heat and pressure from the surface and from the heated magma underneath, you get the formation of metamorphic rocks. Here are a few examples of metamorphic rocks. There are 18 commonly recognized types of metamorphic rocks in the world. The third and final category of rock are the sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks are formed by the erosion and weathering of igneous, metamorphic rock, and organic sediments over time. Under pressure, exposure to water, and compaction, these different rocks are formed. There are over 25 commonly recognized forms of sedimentary rock in the world. So sedimentary rocks are formed over long processes of weathering, erosion, sedimentation, and compaction. Now, depending on the rate at which that compaction occurs and the condition, how much moisture, how much heat, it depends on what that type of sedimentary rock is called. For instance, gypsum is one of the main categories of sedimentary rock. And selenite, basically formed from the same mineral components, forms under different conditions, provide different layering, and is a different type of rock, but basically has the same chemical composition. This is also a form of gypsum called the desert rose. This type of sedimentary rock was formed under high heat and low moisture conditions. Therefore, it is my lab assistant today. Therefore, it's also considered a sedimentary type rock. You have something to say about it? Never work with animals or children. You'll get upstaged every time. So we know what the different rocks are, and we know what minerals are, we know what elements are, but then what defines a crystal? A crystal is a homogeneous solid, a substance composed of minerals arranged in a geometrically regular formation. And that's the key here. The molecules inside are arranged in a regularly repeating sequence, and this is called the crystal structure. Crystals are usually formed on a base of igneous rock under high heat, moisture, and the process of crystallization over time. You may have done this experiment in school where sugar or salt crystals deposited slowly out of a solution onto a base solid, and in this case, a string. Instead of a string, in nature the base is usually igneous rock, and the solution can be rich in many types of minerals, such as quartz silicates or carbonates. So the formation of crystals has a lot to do with the speed of which these are formed or grow through the process of crystallization, and they make these regular geometric shapes. This creates the beautiful crystal points and the beautiful calcite squares that we love to collect and use in our metaphysical practices. So now you know why a crystal is a crystal and some of the processes by which these guys are formed. All of that energy from Mother Earth, all of the time growing and crystallizing within the Earth's crust, produce these beautiful creations of nature, and their metaphysical and vibrational properties are probably why you're actually here watching this video. So now let me get a little less sciencey and let's talk about the metaphysical properties of crystals. Here are some of the shapes that are meaningful to us metaphysically. Now I'm going to be talking about crystal shapes, not necessarily the type of crystal or mineral that the shapes are composed of. So now you know a little bit about some of the shapes. Here is a calcite crystal, and this is in the monoclinic form. This is a raw sapphire, and sapphires and rubies and emeralds like to grow into this hexagonal shape. Now, what does this mean for you metaphysically? Well, let's start out with the single terminated or the crystal point. A crystal in this form can focus energy to a direct area or to a direct purpose. This happens to be a fluorite single terminated point. And so if I were using this in medicine work, I could point this toward a specific area of the body that I felt would benefit from the properties of fluorite. And we know that fluorite is a purifier, calms the brain, purifies systems. We could also use this. This happens to be a citrine single terminated point. Now it's also been coated with some gold to make it extra powerful. But let's just say this is your plain old citrine single terminated point. Again, citrine, the property of the citrine itself is abundance and prosperity. And so this could really focus that energy in your magical work towards something very specific. That's what you can do with the pointed or the single terminated. Double terminated crystals like this clear quartz crystal, again, it has the properties of clear quartz, which is the amplifier and the magic stone. But because it's double terminated, that can doubly amplify or focus that energy in multiple directions. Another type of natural crystal formation is the geode. This is where that igneous rock is on the outside and the crystals formed on the inside of this hollow mass. Any kind of circular crystal like a geode, or in this case, a piece of apatite that's been carved into a circular shape, that amplifies energy out in all directions and can be very powerful in your metaphysical work. We also have twinning crystals. Twinning crystals are crystals that grew at the same time, at the same rate, that are connected to one another. So that's an important designation to make. They're roughly the same size. These are great for any kind of work where you are wanting to amplify, double, grow the effects of something that you're working on. And being that this is clear quartz, it already has that property of amplification. Now, a growth crystal is where you had a crystal that formed and then later a second crystal grew off of it. So they're not the same size. And in this case, this is quartz with titanium treatment, but here's the larger crystal and here's the growth coming from it. This is about rebirth, renewal. Crystals in this formation are very good for bringing about something new into your life. The hexagonal crystals have what I call high value or high power. And the gemstones like emerald, sapphire, and ruby tend to grow in this structure. So very high value, high power for the property of the mineral that's inside them. So sapphire is connected to wisdom, ruby is connected to passion and courage, and emerald is connection to deep love. And that hexagonal shape just adds to that high value and high power that they have, as does any other six-sided crystal. Now, if you have a crystal that comes together to a point on 6 sides, this is called a generator crystal. And the generator crystals, some people feel, do just that they continue to renew and generate their energy over time. Again, a really powerful crystal to utilize in your metaphysical work. Here are some other crystal shapes. So the top left is a phantom quartz crystal, or a quartz crystal that had multiple other smaller crystals forming on the inside, sort of like layering over time. The next crystal on the top right is an aggregator crystal. Here you see a solid body with many small crystal points coming off of it. This is sometimes also called a spirit crystal or a cactus crystal. The bottom left is an inclusion crystal. This is a crystal that contains other types of minerals inside it. It basically grew around other materials. In this case, we have clear quartz crystal that grew around a chlorite crystal. The bottom right is a window crystal, and I highlighted the window area with a red marker so you can see it. These crystals are used to look forward, to see into the future, or to look back to see into the past. These crystals have special meanings outside of the crystal that they're made from. The shape has meaning. Phantom crystals are used for inner work, working with the inner child, uncovering past things and experiences that may be creating blockages. It's for looking within. Aggregator crystals are just that. They help you to aggregate, pull together, see all perspectives, see all fundamental options in a problem or a situation. Inclusion crystals combine the powers and energies of quartz or any other inclusion they have, like in this case, the chlorite. And the window crystal, like I mentioned, is all about looking forward or looking back. So those are some of the shapes. Now, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but I'm talking about shapes. So depending on what the composition of the crystal is, whether it's a type of quartz, and under the quartz category you can have amethyst or citrine, or if it's a type of carbonate, or if it's a type of silicate, depending on the composition, the shape then is going to amplify or focus or just add to the properties of that stone. But what if you have some crystals that aren't necessarily a particular shape, like they've been tumbled, like this piece of lemon quartz, or they were part of a geode that got broken, like this piece of celestialite? Does that take away their properties? No. They're still very powerful crystals. You can see that this still cleaves along very regular geometric planes. It just doesn't have one of those special shapes that were in the previous diagram. This is still an extremely powerful crystal due to the innate properties of the mineral components that make it up. This is a piece of fluorite. This piece of fluorite is just as powerful in its composition as this piece of fluorite, but this one has that special shape that allows it to be used as more of a focus. Don't get wrapped up on having to get all your crystals in particular shapes and types. I have tumbled fluorite. I have broken pieces of fluorite. I have fluorite points. I have citrine points. I have citrine that's more rough. They all have beautiful innate properties, and so they don't have to always be in pristine, isometric, tetragonal, orthorhombic, whatever shapes. So just enjoy the crystals you have, learn their properties, and of course, also learn that different shapes and clusters and groupings can have some additional metaphysical power due to that shape. So that's all I'm going to cover for today. We covered a lot of geology. We covered how rocks are formed so you can appreciate the energy that Mother Earth puts into the creation of these stones. We know that you can use the term stone and rock interchangeably. We know that elements form molecules that come together to form the minerals. Minerals can come together in various ways to form igneous, metamorphic, or sedimentary rock. And that crystals are regularly shaped, geometrically regularly shaped mineral growths that happen under high heat and moisture and produce these very regular geometric patterns. The different geometric patterns then can have some amplification or some innate activity to enhance the property of that crystal. So I hope that was enough for you for today in lesson 1. Next time I'm going to start talking about the chakras or the energy centers of the body and how stones and crystals connect, amplify, and help you with the energy centers of your body and your manifestation work. I hope you had a good time. I know I did. See you real soon. Bye-bye.